Welcome to the Enlightenment Podcast. To our listeners and viewers joining us from all over the world, we're so thrilled you're here as we dive into dialogue about Palestine, dialogue that we feel is often missing from mainstream media, offering insight and context, and also an insight into Palestine's rich traditions and culture and heritage. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that just this week, Israel occupying forces continue to kill and intentionally starve while approving 5,000 new illegal settlement units in the West Bank. Israel continues to attack to Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, where they killed the prime minister, I think, and 11 other cabinet ministers, and of course has already attacked Iran and very recently Qatar. Currently, the Samud flotilla with 50 boats is attempting to break an illegal blockade of Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid and a humanitarian message, and reports are in of a drone attack on 2 of those boats. These are not isolated incidents, obviously. They're part of a systematic ethnic cleansing and genocide campaign against Palestinians that is now coming to define Zionist settler colonialism, or has always. On to our guest today. We are thrilled to invite to the podcast Robert Martin, an Australian human rights activist who was detained and psychologically tortured by Israel in July 2024 aboard the Handler Humanitarian Mission. He's documented the occupation's brutality and has reached millions globally and faces ongoing threats for his truth-telling. So let's start with my first question. Unfortunately, Robert, it's always to Hanan. Hanan, how did Robert come to our attention?
So we did a podcast with Bob Suberi, a Yemeni Jewish American Vietnam veteran, and he was also on the flotilla with Robert. So ahlan, Robert, and welcome to the Enlightenment Podcast.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It makes you realize the seriousness when you read that intro of everything going on in the occupied West Bank and Gaza at the moment. It's horrific. But, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about Palestine.
No, our pleasure, our pleasure. And Robert, personal history normally shapes our understanding of justice. And I think you've described yourself as being anti-Palestinian before 2014. Can you talk about your background in Melbourne, real estate, what triggered you, and sort of your complete transformation during the 2014 Gaza war, I believe, and how you started connecting with Palestinians on social media?
So my best friend, my work colleague or business partner and best man at my wedding is Palestinian. And he was telling me all the time for 10 years, 15 years, whatever it was, what Israel was doing to his people. Displacement, demolitions, executions, murders, administrative detentions, land seizures, massive killings in 2014, killing families, women and children using American-made weapons, F-25s, F-35s, wiping out entire families. And these people being the Palestinians in Gaza, they don't have tanks, they don't have naval ships, they don't have massive cars that are bulletproof. They have very flimsy weapons. They're like rockets, homemade rockets. And they're also a colonized people. People don't realize, and I had no idea about this, but 80% of that population are refugees from what we now call Israel. And so they are fighting for their lives, for their land. They're fighting for all of these things. They're generations of children. They don't want to give up their land. While the Western media and Western world is backing Israel, saying that Israel has the right to exist, says that the right to self-defense. It has the right also to starve women and children and to execute women and children because that's what they do the most. And so I wasn't openly anti-Palestinian, but I sided with the Israelis all the time. And it was something that I didn't know that I was doing. As I said, my Palestinian friend, he would tell me what was going on, and I'd go home and I'd watch the news, and the news would tell me something completely different. They would always lead with the Palestinians just are terrorists and they want to kill the Jews. Every time they use the word Palestinian, it would be terrorist. Every time they use the word Israeli, it would be a murdered Israeli, loving father, just going about his business. He was absolutely massacred, while Palestinians were just died. Just walking down the street, and then they died. And there were lots and lots and lots. Now, they used all of the things that they're using today, but on a smaller scale back then. There was a book called the 51-Day War, and it outlined a lot of these things that they're doing today. But they've always been knocking schools out, hospitals out. They've always been blaming Hamas. It's just part of what they do. And so I wasn't fighting for Palestine as I should have. And that's when I decided to go over to Palestine and to figure this out for myself, because I didn't have the confidence in the media.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. When you traveled to Bil'in, I think in December
Into
2014.
Bil'in.
Yeah, Bil'in, and you had an M16 pointed at you within your first hour. You said you discovered, quote, the deep-rooted racism amongst the majority of Israelis, a society taught to dehumanize Palestinians. I've seen the same thing, but talk to us about your first days in Palestine and how it changed or shattered things that you might have believed beforehand.
Well, the thing that the thing I wasn't expecting, I wasn't expecting to see the anti-Palestinian racism before I got actually into the country. And so when I was going across from Jordan, Allenby Bridge, the bus would stop, and I was the only white guy on the bus. And you had all Arabs, Palestinians, and from all over the different areas. They were all told to get off the bus, and I was told to stay on the bus. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to kill me here. What's happened? I just want to have a look. I thought I was in danger because everyone was off. And the people getting on the bus, very fit, young Israeli kids, in their early 20s, with a tight T-shirt and fancy chino pants and an M16 and a revolver. And I thought, this is right. I shouldn't have come. This is crazy, this place. And they were dehumanizing the Palestinians off the bus. And they didn't even look at my passport. And then you could see the Palestinians and kids and women and elderly, all different types and, walks of life. And so they would come back on the bus, and they took it within their stride because they're used to it. It's something that they're used to. It wasn't the first time. And for me to witness that was a little bit shocking. And then we got to the border. And so I was allowed off the bus first. And then there was like another line that they said I could go over if I wanted to. And that was to jump in front of all of these Palestinians again. Families, young children sleeping on their mums and their dads, lying on the walls, the elderly leaning up against the walls. I've been here for hours. And so I was trying to find an area or a reason that it was so blocked. But the only reason it was intentional to upset and dehumanize the Palestinians waiting there, because there was nothing going on. All the Israelis were just talking to each other. And they tried to get me to go first. I said, no, I'm going to sit here. And I sat down with the Palestinians. And the Israelis were not amused by this. But I feel that they sped up a little bit because of that, because they didn't want someone like me to see it. And, so that was before I got into Palestine at all. And then when I walked through the border, there was a lovely girl asking where I was going to go. And I had a fake itinerary. I had a fake itinerary saying I was going to do all of this Israeli Jewish stuff. I couldn't wait. I'm here to find Jesus and, all of these sorts of things. And so they let me in quite easily. And then I remember doing it. I actually remember then just screwing the actual itinerary up and putting it in a bin and then pulling my West Bank one out, occupied West Bank. And that was sort of a rebellious win, or, yes, I'm in. And because I wasn't well known back then, but I deactivated everything. I was well known enough for them to find me. And then so I went up to Bil'in, where I had organised to meet Hamdi Abu Rama, who is he's a photojournalist. That particular area is well known for 5 Broken Cameras, which was a movie, because things have changed now. But when they used to document everything, the Israelis would come and break all of the cameras and take the USB cards. And so they're quite famous for that. And I'm sitting in a lounge room.
It's a beautiful film, by the way. I want to tell everybody who hasn't seen it, look it up and watch 5 Broken Cameras. And sorry to interrupt, Robert. I just wanted to, as a sidebar, so much for the greatest democracy in the Middle East.
But the thing that's always got me, and I haven't even started yet, is the blatancy. It's in your face. It's not hiding. You could go over there and maybe not know anything about it. You'd still see it, unless you're programmed racist, and this is just what you expect to happen. So I got up now having a coffee and a cigarette with Hamdi because they love their coffee and their cigarettes because, they jokingly say the Zionists could kill me tomorrow, so I may as well die with caffeine and, tobacco in my system. And we're sitting there, and then everything got really, really panicking, very, very panicking all over the place. Hamdi was on the phone. He said, I've got to go. There's soldiers up at the top. And I said, okay, I'll come. I mean, I didn't know what I was saying I'm going to come for. I didn't know where we were going. I don't speak Arabic. He said, no, you can't come, Rob. In the end, I came and I was in the front seat. They put me in the front seat. And we got up to the top, and the village is small. All the villages are small, but you can see the apartheid wall, and then behind that you can actually see settlements. And these guys are famous for saving some of their land. They were going to get some more of their land encroached in, and they went to court, and they had these rallies every Saturday or every Friday. As we got up there, there's a soldier right in the middle of the road, and he had the guns out, and then he saw that there was a white person in the car. And everything changed a little bit because he had his gun out straight at the car, and then he saw it was a white guy. And I said, what are you doing? I mean, just instant reaction, and his gun moved slightly to cover his own face. He was trying to hide his face now. And I could see that. I could tell that that's what he was doing. And there's footage of me asking, why are you up here? What are you doing? This is the children's playground. They were up there to take children's play equipment. They were there only to take children's play equipment. And a photo and a video that I took, it shows unequivocally what they were there for, because you have the soldiers at the front, you then have the equipment just behind them, and then you have the apartheid wall, and then you have the settlements. And there's no reason for these to be in here. They've stolen all of that. Stay in your own land. But they have these fantastic, it's like a garage door. They open up and come through into the village anytime they want. And they were there basically to start provocations. That's what they wanted. It's the only reason. Because there's not a lot of grass up there. There's no grass. It's all dirt. It's all, it's the desert. Just a lot of houses made, but there's not a lot of school playing equipment. And, then they denied they were doing it. And we've got photos of them with all the equipment on a truck going through the wall to get rid of it. And so that was my first day. And these were sort of kids. I was sitting there with Hamdi, and we were sort of just thinking about the day, and we would have been 150 meters, 200 meters away from the wall. And then a Jeep from the other side of the wall, we could see coming all the way down. Then they stood on top of their Jeep, and that's what it's called, scoping. So they get their M16 out and they look to see who it is, because they wanted to see, if I was still here as a white guy. And I've got it all on footage. I said, what are you doing? And he said, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be here. I said, no, you're not supposed to be here. Let's be really clear. And it was like a two-way conversation. But the fact that they didn't even want me on that side of the wall just blew my head off. Like, you've got all of that other land, and for these soldiers to be able to come in and be nonchalant about it showed me that it's ingrained. It's ingrained. Their job is to put the foot around the neck of the Palestinians and slowly push. That's what their job is. And I saw that in the first 1 hour of being in Palestine. 1 hour. And what annoys me the most is, why can't mainstream media go through there? Because the footage that I took over a number of weeks on my own, because I don't have a crew, I have a phone that I held up, and I got so much footage, so much damning footage 10 years ago. But yet we're not going to call them an apartheid state. We're not going to call them a pariah state. We're not going to call it occupation. We're not going to call it apartheid, because we're scared we're going to get called an anti-Semite. Look, we don't care who does it. It just happens to be Israeli Jews are doing it. It's them, so they should stop.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And actually, Robert, it brings back memories when you mentioned about the Allenby. In my days, when we crossed, because my family's in Bethlehem, we went every other year to see them. And in those days, white Western people weren't even allowed on the same buses. So there were buses for the West and buses for Palestinians. Exactly. So you wouldn't see the humiliation that we had to go through time and again for the whole day. Usually it took the whole day. And one of those occasions when, as you said, when you get off the bus, one of my sisters at the time, my youngest, she was not even a year old, they grab everything to search. And my mom had the nappies and the milk formula, and they have these big garbage sort of containers outside the buses, and they just threw it. And my mom kind of begged and said, please, my daughter will be here the whole day, no water, no nappies, no milk, nothing. And they said, just like yelled at her, like, move on, move on. So yeah, that's just like daily life for Palestinians.
It is.
Sorry, it is. But speaking truth about Palestine comes with a price. And you and your business, you've been targeted. They tried to destroy your reputation in Australia. You've been threatened multiple times, as you said, by Israeli soldiers. You've been detained and tortured. We'll talk about that in a little bit in the podcast. But could you talk about these sort of escalating costs, and why do you still continue? And thank you for continuing, but just for the audience to know.
Well, I don't see how I couldn't. So once you've seen it, and I saw a bit, the first time I went in 2014, I thought I'd seen everything. And then I went back in 2017 or 18 and saw Hebron and the foot. So I've seen even more. It's not something you can put down. I also am in a luxury position where, yes, they did try and ruin my businesses, but I owned my businesses. And so I didn't have a boss coming to me. And my business partner was Nasser Mashni, who is my Palestinian friend, who is very outspoken, and he's like the number one Palo in Australia. He speaks at all the rallies, and he's very outspoken. And the only reason I mention that is the fact that if he couldn't turn me, it just shows you how powerful that the lobby is. Well, I had the anti-terror unit come to my office. It was amusing. I remember the day. I was actually out, and they said, "Oh, hello, Robert. It's senior someone Lanaway from the anti-terrorism unit." And I said, "Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, what can I do for you?" He said, "We need to talk." I said, "I'm very busy, mate," because I didn't want to speak to him. I did not know what was going to happen. I hadn't been to Palestine at this stage. Hadn't actually been to Palestine, but my posting and my voice had become quite large, especially in Melbourne. He said, no, we'll come to you wherever you are. I said, I'm in Sydney. He said, we'll be there soon. I wasn't. I was in Melbourne. And so in the end, we caught up. He came to my office. And it was the best thing that we ever could have done. Because at the end of it, he knew that I was a normal business person. Father, married, business partner, father, married, just trying to, make some dollars, get ahead in life. And I've come across the Palestinian plight, and I'd like to try and make a difference. And 3 hours, at the end of it, they said, you won't hear from us again, Rob. We love what you're doing. We know that you're a normal person. You're not a nutter. You're not, have really mentally issues. We respect that you're going to go to Palestine. We respect that you're going to do that. He said, if you come across real fanatical people on your Facebook page, can you let us know? Because back then there was a bit of ISIS going on, and they wanted, and so it was a great thing. And I know that that particular area of Melbourne was so upset. They're very, very upset. And we also did some building developments in those areas, and they rang up trying to make sure that I was only going to put nice people in the developments. And I said, well, what do you mean, nice people? And they didn't want any Arabs, they didn't want any Palestinians. They didn't, this is open to me. And so again, but because it was my own business, they gave up. They used to ring up a lot saying, did you know that there's a guy, Robert Martin, in your office using the internet to create terror and to spread the word of anti-Semitism and to, get people on his side to terrorize Melbourne. And in the end, I'd let the phone call go and say, well, thanks very much. That's actually me. I own the business, but thank you very much for your kind thoughts. And after a while it went. And so I'm in the position where I can do it, which means I'm in a position that I should do it.
That's what we feel. We like to tell people there's a point where humanity needs to step in. But going back to Palestine, you talked about that that the soldiers stealing the children's playground equipment. There's some documentary work in My Weekend in Palestine. And also, I wanted to talk about the 2018 Hebron footage exposing Israeli apartheid. And I think you've been able to do this, as you say now, to a growing number of Instagram followers, which is so fantastic. Are there any particular discoveries or things that you saw over these years that has really, truly shocked you? What surprised you?
I would have 60 or 70 accounts of things that I saw, from olive picking with a magnificent person, Sammy. His land is his brother and his mother got executed in the church just outside Bethlehem. That was as we were discussing these things, he had Israeli soldiers on quad bikes ripping up past his trees to try and intimidate him. He doesn't have enough money for his medication, but the way he started talking about his land, and they said, they offer to buy and then we're not going to sell it, and so they start to steal it. And then for his family members to be executed and nothing to happen other than be harassed all the time. From being in Hebron to spending time with the gentleman who took the picture of that young soldier who executed the Palestinian lying on the ground, who was incapacitated, and meeting his daughters and hearing the story after he shot the incident. So he shot the illegal incident. He was charged. He was harassed. He was told, don't come back and talk about this. We don't want it anymore. Leave us alone. To soldiers coming into the top of his roof and urinating down some pipes into his daughter's rooms, and him not being able to do anything. And because he filmed a soldier executing someone, Ahed Tamimi, she got 18 months for slapping a soldier. This guy got out before the 18 months for executing a Palestinian with an M16 from 15 meters away. 15 meters away. And so you put all of that. When I met the Tamimis, it's a young cousin, beautiful boy, very gently spoken. He had just got out of prison for throwing stones, which he hadn't thrown stones. And I saw a picture a few months later of him. His head now is like this because he was shot in the face. But the person that shot him denies it, and they said that he fell off his bike. To remembering visiting families whose young 6-year-old had been intentionally run over by a settler who lives down the road, who ran over 2 6-year-olds. My daughter was 6 at the time. One murdered, died. The other one has stitches and will never be the same. To me, getting a haircut all the time and enjoying the company of the hairdresser so much, and him laughing and getting the beautiful ways of Palestine and his families, and how he misses his nephew who was his apprentice. And I said, what happened? Well, he was executed at the front door in Jerusalem. These are all stories that now, and within these stories, there's a dozen stories within those stories. As you're having a laugh and you're having coffee and you're having some great food, because all they want to do is they want to feed you. They want to make sure you're okay, Rob. We just want you to tell the world what we're like, and that's all. To having stories like that and seeing these kids all looping around, and you say, what's going on with the? What, do they play sport pretty hard? What's going on there? Well, the soldiers shot him in the sciatic nerve. It was a game. So they shot a few of them. And you don't come back from that either. I mean, it's something they're well known for doing for the soccer team. Like the Palestinian soccer team, they shot them in the league so they couldn't play. I mean, it's a basic thing that they do. These are the things that they do. they get so bored with the general everyday of occupation that they have to up the ante, which is, and so I've got story after story after story of these.
Mm.
And another one that does haunt me slightly is Issa Amro. You're probably familiar with Issa Amro. He Youth Against Settlements. He's a very well-known activist. And he has spoken at the UN and, very well spoken. He was giving me a tour around Hebron. And first of all, we're seeing the signs. All the signs are changing. They're becoming Hebrew. And Hebron doesn't have a lot of Israeli settlers there. Doesn't have a lot. There's more soldiers to protect these people within this area and to kill and steal and get rid of all the Palestinians within that community. Well, we came to a spot and he said, right, I'll leave you here, Rob. I said, what? Why? He said, I can't go any further. I said, but there's no marks, there's no lines, there's nothing. He said, yeah. And then a soldier came up who knows him because he sees him every single day and just is rude to him. And then this little kid, 13, 14, I don't know how much, maybe he was 11, who knows. But he started swaying back, really like, I'm confident. And he yelled at Issa in Hebrew. And Issa speaks Hebrew. And I asked him a bit later, I said, what did he say to you? And he said, he will come upstairs and kill my family, me and my family one day. And then high-fived the soldiers that were next to it. Now, when we see footage at the moment, because the settlers are killing the Palestinians throughout the West Bank, there's no surprise. This kid said he was going to do it. He will be doing it today. That was in 2017, 2018. He was already 13, 14. He would be doing it today. And because when I got back, I was on the flotilla this year. So when I got back from the flotilla, I was asked to join a group in the WhatsApp. And it was a WhatsApp group because the gentleman that was in, what's the movie called? My Land.
Another Land.
Another Land.
Yeah.
He'd been executed.
Yes.
And they were saying, no, he was throwing stones, he was doing that, he was doing this. Well, his actual phone was found, his phone, and he was filming on this. And it clearly shows that he was executed. Clearly. Now, what the Israelis say, they say we do this for your safety, but they locked 11 Palestinians up. 11 Palestinians up. Their friend, best friend, he was a well-known figure in the Palestinian movement, had been executed. The person that executed, his job is demolitions. That's what he does. This is what I do. I go and he just makes room for Palestinians to get out and for the Israelis to get in. Well, 5 days later, he's out, still out. And we did a Zoom meeting the other night and he was just in the background. And the reason I say that is because this has been going on since, I filmed it in 2014 and it was going on well before that. And so this is not new, but they're just really speeding it up. And this is also when we can't, I definitely can't. I'm a white atheist Australian. I will never tell anyone how they can resist. But when you've seen what I have seen, when you have felt what I have felt, when you've seen it between the eyes, have them threatened to kill you, and you know that they will because they have done in the past, and these guys are kids, I have no right whatsoever to talk about how they can resist, because the world has let the Palestinians down. If one person like me can walk around with a telephone and get this much evidence.
So the Palestinians do put nets up and they cage themselves because the settlers are always throwing their filthy garbage on them daily just to humiliate them further. And we did a beautiful podcast just recently, last month, with Ahed Tamimi, who's really a true heroine. She's been through so much and she doesn't give many interviews now. So I would highly recommend.
Very quiet. She's a quiet girl.
She is. She's lovely. And she's been through hell and back. But yeah, I would highly recommend watching and listening to that. And Robert, just to go back to, I mentioned my family from Bethlehem. So I'm a Christian Palestinian. My dad is from Bethlehem. My mom was a Nakba survivor in 48 from West Jerusalem, where they sold their villa, installed German Jews, and the same, they had a building in Haifa where she was born, again, all taken. And that's the story of many, many Palestinians, as you know, hundreds of thousands. And yet the Zionists still claim that Palestinians left voluntarily, quote unquote. But now the world is finally witnessing, as you said, the world, the world has let down Palestinians, but now it's out in the open. And this ongoing ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, the land theft, we call it a Naqba al-Mustamirra, the ongoing Naqba has never really stopped. It's ongoing. Right. It's always been there if anybody wanted to see it, really. But you've documented checkpoints, humiliation, home demolitions, the violence, settler violence you talked about, and how settlers get to have 10 times more water than Palestinians. When you talk about what I think your quote was, calculated deception that masked Israel's crimes. Could you talk about that, Robert?
When you know, then you see everything. You see everything. So to somebody that's just going through, they probably wouldn't notice the water so much. But when you notice it, and then you think, oh my gosh. But then you can go to another level. And sometimes they've got bullet holes in them. They do that through Hebron, and they do that through some of the other villages where they'll, just the Israelis will pop a few holes in it. And then all of a sudden the water's starting to drain out. So, I think it was Beit Uma where they locked the gate for 2.5 years. So people couldn't get their cars out for 2.5 years. There's also areas where the Israelis have taken over homes to use them as checkpoints. One was a number of years, and then, after a number of years, the family got it back. They went to court, and they finally got it back. But there was no money back. There was no compensation. There was none of this sort of thing. But we also know that the Israelis in Gaza were calculating the food, the calories going in and out. This was years ago. This isn't today. This is years ago. And these are the things that, people need to know about. The whole business of Israel supposedly leaving Gaza in 2005 is a farce. I mean, they may have removed some horrible human beings, but they did that as a way to say, look, we want peace. This is what we're doing. But they locked Gaza up completely, and they change what they allow in and what they allow out on a very regular basis. Now, any group of people who are going to stop baby formula going in, who is going to shoot ventilators in a hospital, you know what you're dealing with. And these are the things that we can see. These are the things that we can see. I've heard reports as well that the government, the Netanyahu government, is worried that the cries of genocide, they can still sort of deny it because the footage is not out yet. But once they're in, the footage will be undeniable because you can leave these kids, Israeli kids with guns, who have been brought up to despise, hate, call Palestinians terrorists. And also they used to teach them as well, they teach them a lot that the Palestinians are trying to steal their land. And so they feel that they have to go in and they have to do these things. But I think the biggest calculation that Israel's ever done, and it's been highly successful, is the mainstream media and the Western governments, because they have got them to where they need them. And when I read there's the Israel Project is a book, and there's another one called the Hasbro Guide, and they're both explain to you the words. And the words that I used at the very beginning, and it's so sophisticated, and you just think, my God, I can't believe I fell for it. I got lied for all these sorts of things. And it's as simple as using that every time that Israel is like a beacon of light. I know in Christian churches they talk about Israel as, it's the saving grace. This is where we need to look after it. But then you've got to the Palestinians just demonized as simple human beings, and then they turn it into the jihadis, and you go from there, and then you've got the Islamophobia. So I put them all in the same box before I knew. I thought they were all Muslims, and I went to Bethlehem, and I seen heaps of Christians all the way through there, all different people enjoying different religions. And surprisingly, there's quite a few atheists as well, or agnostics, and that surprised me as well, but you don't hear about that. And so I think the biggest calculation, and they've nailed it up until October maybe 7th, they had nailed the ruse that they had for the governments and the mainstream media, because it's very hard to fight for Israel today. Very hard to say that you're on their side.
Absolutely. And under Islam, the peoples of the book, including Jews and Christians, are very protected and respected, and there is never an issue, as you rightly mentioned, living there. While in the West there were the pogroms and now the Islamophobia and the anti-Semitism and so on. So they've reversed it and inversed it in terms of their propaganda and their hasbara.
Well, Christian Zionism's the worst.
Yes.
And it's something I don't speak a lot of. I've got an uncle who I don't speak to anymore. He's very high up in Christians for Israel. He's an international law lawyer, and I now remember looking back as a kid, hearing slightly bits and pieces about Zionism. I wasn't, I had Christianity sort of pushed down my throat a little bit, and it sort of makes sense every so often. You could say, I remember them saying these sorts of things, but yet we all fear Muslims. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me too, because I know a lot of Muslims, and I met a lot of Muslims in Palestine, good people.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you shove propaganda down people's throats for long enough, and in the most pernicious ways, from Hollywood movies to our news screens. I come from parents and grandparents who were born in apartheid South Africa, and it's they went through a similar world where it was just ingrained that you should always look with cast aspersions on people who didn't have the same skin color as you. There's nothing more ridiculous than that. Let's talk about apartheid in Israel. It's brutal. You filmed in Hebron, where Palestinians can't walk on certain streets. Can you give us any more about the visceral reality of this segregation, this separating people based on what?
Well, there are different roads for a start. Different roads. If you go from one car and you get into the Palestinian car and you're going to go to a village, it takes you twice as long. And the roads are horrific. You're better off walking. It's terrible. But you have a laugh. It's if you go through the streets, and look, I'll be honest, I didn't go to Tel Aviv. I had no interest in going to Tel Aviv. I did not go to a settlement either. I had no interest in going to a settlement. I walked through, bits and pieces where I would speak to Israelis. I'll tell you one segregation was actually, and it's probably not the answer you're looking for, but Miko Peled and I, who's a friend of mine now, general's son, very, very good man, he and I were walking back to our hotel, and we were in Sheikh Jarrah, which is predominantly Palestinian, a Palestinian area, but it was closed off to all the Palestinians. So the Palestinians were out, they couldn't go back in. Well, the Palestinians were in their house, they couldn't get out. And all the Jews were everywhere having a holiday, doing what they wanted to do, armed security, the whole lot. And these kids came up, and they were having a go at this young Palestinian kid. And I said, what's going on? They would have been maybe 13, 14, 15. It's hard to tell, and I can't overly remember. Long and the short of it, we started talking about Palestinians because he said he's a terrorist. All the Palestinians are terrorists. They smell, they're animals. And then I said, have you ever met one? He said, no. Why would I ever want to meet one? I said, well, then how would you know that they are? How does that work? And so that was a real confronting one. And another one, which actually is definitely segregation, is when you go into the old city, if you go into Jerusalem, and it changed between 2014 and 2018. You'll have the Israeli Jews can walk around wherever they want. They can do whatever they want. Doesn't matter. They've got the kippah on. They can go wherever. Even through the Arab areas, no problem. They can do what the hell they want down there as well. Whereas the Palestinians walking through, almost all of them will get searched. And it's not just getting searched either. So they put them aside into a spot where they had to step up. It's like you're almost putting them on a pedestal. It may have changed again since I was there, but they would put them up, and so they'd be on a pedestal so everyone would see it. Because it does a number of things. So if you're a Christian or you're visiting and you don't know much about, Palestinians or the Jewish people, you see this and you think, oh my God, what's going on there? That's dangerous. But what they also do is they'll have one or two people with a machine gun sort of step back and point it upwards. And you're not going to want to hang out there too long. And so it's giving you a subliminal message that these darker skinned ones over here, you're going to have a problem with, and they're very dangerous. And we Israelis with the soldiers are protecting you. And it's a very, very important subliminal message. But also when you go through the occupied West Bank, there's red signs. And they are quite confronting because it says it's against Israelis are not allowed into this area. It's against Israeli law. It's a danger to your life. I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much word for word. Mm. And if you see that sign, it's pretty it's scary. So the buses that go, the Christian tours or the Zionist tours in their big buses, they don't get out and meet a Palestinian. What they will do is they will go through this, and I watch them, they slow down in front of the signs. They actually slow down and they talk about that particular area being dangerous. I tried to get some of them off a bus once. They wouldn't do it. But that's part of it, and it works. It works. You can imagine they get home and you can say, look, we're on the bus and there's a sign saying you shouldn't go there. It's like you're putting a sign up, bears. You're going to think about it. But also it dehumanizes the Palestinians living in there.
Absolutely.
Imagine when they're going home that they see that. They see those signs. Again, it's another dehumanization. And that is one of the biggest segregations, which is so stupid because Israelis go into those areas all the time. Yeah. They just have their Israeli uniforms on, their occupation uniforms. Exactly. They are there all the time.
Yeah, exactly, Robert. And also you mentioned Sheikh Jarrah, and that's where I think for the audience, what went viral is when Mona al-Kurdi said, Jacob, you're stealing my land. He said, if I don't, who else would, or something to that effect. And then we did a very lovely podcast with Miko Peled. He's wonderful and very outspoken, and he knows inside out what's happening. So it's really important, but he's far in between in terms of voices speaking out.
Brilliant. So he's the one that opened my mind.
Oh, really?
Not my Palestinian friend, but my now very good friend, Israeli Jew. Yeah. So it's funny how it works.
I think, if I may, I think a lot of Western white people, when it's almost more credible hearing it from Israelis and Jewish anti-Zionists, for people to really see the truth than from Palestinian voices that say, oh, it's Palestinians, what do so I think, so that's why it's important, these voices as well, but sadly Palestinian voices are still ignored. Actually, when Shamim and I went to Jerusalem with friends years ago, we had a Palestinian from Jerusalem, a guide, and I turned to him and spoke in Arabic, and then within not even a minute, two undercover Israeli security people took him away for an hour, questioning him. He had his papers, he had his permit to be a guide and so on. But the fact that I spoke to him in Arabic, he almost lost his license, basically. But that's just like a little example of harassment.
But when you sit though and you watch that, it's really confronting because most people just walk in and out. So I sat there and I watched it, and it was like, it's crazy.
yeah.
So,
And even referring to them as Arab areas, it's Palestinian. They just try to dehumanize the whole Palestinian culture and ethos by calling them Arabs. But Robert, in October 2023, you publicly stated, and I quote, "Wake the hell up, people. Israel is not defending itself." Can you talk about the importance of using direct language? And you also, another quote, you said, "The settler colonial state conducting genocidal siege," I believe. Can you talk about what you said?
the language might have been a little bit stronger than that as well. Yes, I do use strong language. And because if someone's going to get offended by a word and not the context or the meaning of that, there's a problem there. And look, it's going back to people like Mika. We all have different people that listen to us. I am myself. I do not try and be anything different. I am going to be myself. I do swear. I get very angry sometimes. I have seen more than most, and it makes me really angry. I get. I almost had an argument with my kids 2 days ago because of the execution on that the whole world is looking at, and you think, well, we've got several 100,000 Palestinians. How many of them have been executed? And we're not seeing that on the front page. And you don't have Trump sticking up for him. I mean, what sort of world are we living in? I mean, he said some horrible, horrible things, that man, to the point where, but people are feeling sorry for him. So this is the racist world that we live in. And the guy that shot him is white and white and white, so they can't call him a terrorist. They can't do this. They can't do that. I believe we need to call it out. I believe that we need to say it how it is. Israel have also had a wonderful time of being able to just go anti-Semitism, Jew hater, anti-Semitism, Jew hater. It's not so easy now. And I reckon we need to just use some other words that cut through the bullshit, to cut through that. Because, I am not a Ilam Pape. I'm not a professor. I am just an Aussie dude, an Aussie bloke that went overseas and was shocked and have been pissed off ever since. And that's why. That's why.
Love that. Let's talk about the flotilla, the Handler flotilla. Critics say that's provocative, sort of what we're talking about now. You were carrying baby formula, medicine, children's prosthetics when 30 Israeli commandos illegally boarded the boat in international waters. How do you respond to those who call humanitarian aid provocation? And what are your thoughts about the current Samud flotilla? Because there's 50 boats now attempting to break this blockade. And
there is. Okay, so I was on the Handler last year, but that boat didn't get out. So I was supposed to be on and people need to listen to this. I was supposed to be on the Conscience boat. It's about 2.5 months ago. It was bombed just outside Maltese waters. Bombed. 2 bombs. Okay, just so people know. So I was supposed to be on that boat. And then the Handler, the Madeleine, that went out and did exceptionally well. Did a wonderful thing. And the fact that they had the lovely Greta, who's still a kid, she's only 22 and she's doing these wonderful things, put the spotlight onto it. And then my turn came and I was well enough then because I had been sick to go. And so that was this year. So I got onto the Handler and the day we were leaving, just to give you an idea, when people say, oh, it's a sightseeing thing, what difference are you going to make, all of these things. Well, we should ask Israel, why do they try and bomb these things when they're in international waters? They're so far away. Well, the morning that we were supposed to leave, we had a rope around the propeller. And people say that happens, and it does happen. You are correct. But this rope floats. It was brand new, and it's designed for a different boat. So a rope that floats can't do that. So they should have done a little bit better than that. As we were leaving, there was a huge tank of our fresh water getting loaded on. Fresh water. So drinking water, showering water, but we wouldn't shower anyway because there's not a lot of time, and cooking. The gentleman there was holding his phone saying, hurry up, I've got to go. Well, it banged a little bit. Some came out and it burnt Tan's leg because it wasn't water. It was sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid. Now, to me, it's attempted murder because that will do damage. So not only if you drink it, you will die because it's strong. If it goes through the pipes in the boat, the pipe would basically self-combust. And so that was two things in the one morning. And so we left, and then we had 8 days, and then we knew that they were coming. We knew because we were out a certain distance, so we knew that they wouldn't allow us into Palestinian waters. And so 10 o'clock that night, we see I didn't see these, but a lot of other people did, two things flares. Now, the water and everything was really, really easy to see everything. You can see for miles out in the Mediterranean. It's beautiful. Well, after these two flares went up, we couldn't see anything. It was like you were in a fog. And then after that, we had this boat. A gentleman, sounded very nice, saying that his name was so-and-so from the Israeli naval, whatever he wanted to call himself. And that we'd had a very daunting and a very busy 8 days, and it's time to finish our holiday or our trip, and that they would be boarding in 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, I saw a boat, and this was really bizarre because, it just appeared there with these soldiers on it. And they said, we're going to board in 10 minutes, and then they boarded. And yes, there was probably 30. It's hard to tell, but if people want to, go and nitpick with numbers, they can go and watch the footage that's still out there, because it was bizarre. Because we were very well known for taking aid to Gaza. Yeah. We were activists, but yet some of them had 4 guns on them, these gentlemen. 4. This unit is Unit 13. That's what they're called. And the Unit 13, they are the ones that did the Al-Shifa hospital. When they went in there and murdered those people, it's these guys. This is what they do. They're trained for all of these sorts of jobs. I believe that they also sprayed us because everybody fell asleep very, very quickly other than me. And I take a particular medication that can actually stop things from making me get drowsy. So, and I was watching them, and it was bizarre, very, very bizarre. But yes, they took us in international waters, took over our boat, which is, it's kidnapping and it's also human trafficking. That's the law. And so they took our boat for 11, 12 hours, and they took us to Ostad, which is their area where their shipping is. And they like to take all people trying to sneak into Israel, supposedly. They take us there. And then other experiences happen from there.
Yeah, and Ashdod is another brutal facility.
Yeah.
Robert, and you were detained, I believe, for 3 days in the Israeli prison. You were denied medication. You're subjected to strip searches, which we've all...
Several times. They loved it.
And you're kept in high heat with bed bugs. You went on a hunger strike. Can you talk about not only physically but also psychologically the torture they made you go through, and how does it compare? I know that's maybe unfair, but how does it compare to Palestinian hostage endure? I'm calling them hostage because they are what they endure.
Yes, so it was 3 or 4 days. We sort of lost track that we were in there. The strip searches, they would come in with fully armored gear on, full armor. So you couldn't see their fingers, they could see their knuckles, and they're different, but it's part of what they did. I had the feeling that they were doing it as part of training as well, training new people. I think that was part of what they wanted to do and trying to scare us. They took us all to one room when we got off the boat. Unit 13 told us that we're now changing people. We're going to go with the prison people, and they're completely different. Angry, very big, very muscly, very angry, whereas the Unit 13 were sleek, slender for speed, and they were handing us over. They took us all into one room. Chris Smalls, who was the only black man, African-American, he was picked up and beaten quite badly, which was awful to see. And then we didn't see him for quite some time. When they took me in the room, they said, Robert Martin. I said, yep. And they said, you're in big trouble. And that was part of their psychological. And I told them, and this is just me being me, and maybe I shouldn't always be me, but I said, I'm looking forward to getting beaten up. Cannot wait, because I'll show the world what you like. I'm here trying to deliver food, aid, teddy bears, and you're threatening me. I'm a 53-year-old man. How good are you going to look? No problem. And that didn't really work. Then they put me and one other gentleman together, where they had all the other men together. So for one reason, we were on our own, and I thought it was because they were going to send somebody in to beat me up. That's what I thought it was. I didn't sleep for 3 days because of the bed bugs as well. I have a real problem with bugs, and they were big, big bed bugs. And they had all of the other creepy crawlies. It was awful. It was horrible. The toilet was horrible. Shower was either too hot or too cold. I don't know how they do that, but they managed to make it look like that. The temperature was horrific in the cell. I could feel a breeze in the hallway where the guards were. So they've obviously got good cooling. So, that was great. They kept offering us food. We said no because we were on a hunger strike. I wasn't going to eat or drink their food regardless. And I'd also made a pact with Tan, my Aussie comrade, that we weren't going to. And so I didn't. That really upset them. They stole all of our Palestine paraphernalia. They took it all off and threw it away. They had great pleasure in doing that, but there was a few things that they couldn't get. One is my tattoos that really... they told me that if I'd gone into other countries, I'd have my hand cut off and, all of that sort of stuff. They're trying to figure out ways they could cover all of my tattoos up. I have about 15, I think, of all Palestine ones, so it's very difficult for them to do that, but they hated it. Tan had and this is awful though. So Tan has a nose ring, but it's one that's soldered in. And so they couldn't get it out. They actually went into her room with bolt cutters, big ones, to try and cut it out. And they were going to, and they got a hold of it, and it's got a mark on it. It didn't work, so they went back with a smaller one to try, and they couldn't get it off, so it stayed on. But that made them so angry. Wow. And Tan was petrified. Tan was petrifying because you don't know what they're going to do. These guys also, as a psychological, they rang, and when I say they, I'm not sure who it is, whether it's the immigration or whether it's the prison people. They rang our embassy and they said, Rob has assaulted somebody. We're moving him. We don't know where, and they hung up. This wasn't true. This was a complete fabrication. But what happens is that the embassy has to basically go verbatim to tell your family. They don't want emotions in it. There has to be just, they are like a communication. That's it. And so my family and loved ones were petrified for a day. They didn't know where I was. And they didn't tell the embassy. They said, we don't know. And they did that, I believe, because they couldn't get to me. They thought, you know what, let's do it to them, which I thought was, it was awful because it did scare the hell out of my family.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but I do have an experience now with soldiers in the occupied West Bank, like the demolition unit, which are awful. There are different people again. The ones at the Allenby Bridge that wear the chino pants, and now the 13 and also the jail ones. And they all hate Palestine, hate Palestinians. They hate how strong they are. They cannot stand how strong they are. And they hate people like me that choose to fight with them and no one else. They take it as though, because they said, Rob, why are you taking food to Gaza? Is you hate us this much? You hate Jews this much? I said, so you think I'm going to take food to children that you're killing to piss you off? He says, yes, of course. This is how they do it. And he was a funny one.
Narcissist syndrome, anybody?
This one said to me, he said, oh, so you've been to Israel twice, Robert? I said, no, never been to Israel. Sorry. He goes, no, you have. I said, no, I would know. And so he moved the computer around and he showed my visits. I said, Palestine. You said Israel. I've been to Palestine. Yeah, twice. Of course. I love it. I don't recognize Israel. And he lost it. He was really upset at that stage. He was really upset. But and I'll just tell you quickly what they want to do. So when you get off the boat, they offer you a deal. And the deal is you can go through Ben Gurion Airport and you can go home to your country now, no questions asked. But you must sign a form. The form is saying that you tried to get into Israel illegally. That's what that form is. And so none of us obviously signed it. And then they kept asking for a few days on about that. They do not want to keep you after 3 days. And if you haven't drunk water for 3 days, they really are obligated to treat you differently. And they don't like that either.
And illegally, it was more illegally being abducted and brought to the settler colony of Israel.
Yes, and that's what we tried to say. We said, look, we've been kidnapped. We've been absolutely kidnapped. You've taken us out of international waters. We demand that you take us back to our boat so we can go to Gaza. That was the legal stance as well.
Mm-hmm. So from detention to horrific treatment, you and Tanya wrote demanding that Australia, quote, stop trading with Israel, stop sending weapons components. And your government called for your release, but they continue to export arms and support Israel. So Robert, can you talk about how the Australian government needs to be braver, if you like, and to stand with humanity? And are you hopeful that they will change their position?
I think the Australian government's probably improved more than most countries, to be honest. But Albanese, who is our Prime Minister, he was very pro-Palestine 20 years ago. He actually said in government that we have to stop the Israelis from demonizing the Palestinians and they were stealing land. He used all of those words. And so I think he's always been pro-Palestine ever since, but he's playing a game. And when he came out and he said he's going to recognize the state of Palestine, great words. I mean, it's so late, it's going to mean nothing. There's nothing left. What we need to do is we need to recognize the state of Israel as being a criminal entity. That's what we need to do. We need to recognize all of sanctions that we possibly can. That's what we need to do. But I believe that, it's always nice when you have the Israeli government call your prime minister an anti-Semite. That's always a good sign because Israel's gone too far. You and I know they went too far when they were created, before they were created. But I think that he's got the other countries now as well on his team. Things might be different. It seems that these guys can do things without Trump because normally we've had to wait for America. But, I think my understanding is with South Africa, America was the last one to say enough is enough. And it was because everyone else had done it and they had no choice. And I believe we need something like that. I don't believe that it's 70,000 people dead. I believe it's more, 300 potentially. and every day you're going to get a death that is from something that happened a month ago, or another death from 2 weeks ago. These are the new deaths that we're not going to be hearing about. We're going to hear about, the famine deaths or the bombed. We're not going to hear about these poor people on their last breath. That's just going to keep getting bigger. And they won't be able to stand and say anything but we need to hold Israel to account.
Yep.
And I think Netanyahu's, he really fancies himself. He can't keep doing this and go to another country that he is, wanted as a war criminal.
Let's hope so, because as you've described, Israel, and as we know, Israel is lawless before its inception, and definitely now, murderous, genocidal. It's an ethno state. There's just no room for that, in my opinion, in the world. So as a result, it feels like Palestine has unexpectedly, after October 2023, become the moral litmus test of our era, because it's more than that day. It's as if the mask, as you say, is slipping on the so-called Western rules-based order, and liberalism and democracy are really being exposed for the very limited concepts that they are. You were deemed unfit to fly, and you needed IV drips and a lot of sleep just to recover from the Israeli detention, the illegal detention that we talked about. But you immediately went back to activism, Robert. It's brave. What drives that relentless commitment for you personally?
It took me longer to recover than I thought it was going to. So I got home. I didn't sleep until I got into the hospital, and then I knew that Tan was okay, and I knew that everything was okay. I could sleep, and bang, I slept for 13 or 14 hours. And that was after obviously some drips and some blood tests to be sure. I was quite tired when I came back. I had tests and my liver function was off, and there was something else that was off too, and that could have been from pure exhaustion, but it could also have been, I believe, that we got gas to put us to sleep, and it could have been something like that still running in my system. That's quite possible. Activism is in my blood, I think, and I can't sit still for too long. I have a responsibility to do things. It's funny. I don't like doing videos. I'm not that type of person. I think a lot of people think that I am, but I know that they work sometimes. And so for the last month, I've been mainly just trying to raise other people's voices. I don't think I'll get into Palestine. I have a feeling that I won't be allowed into Palestine for a little while. Or America. The States probably won't have me. I'm not sure either. But I am trying to just do what I can. I went to an event the other day for Egyptian kids. A whole lot of Palestinian supporters there, and it's a beautiful thing, and raising money, and that's a nice thing. And it keeps me busy, and I just I've got to do it.
That's wonderful. And you mentioned also that everyone now is rushing to say, okay, we'll acknowledge a Palestinian state and 22% of historic Palestine, which really was solid in the first place, and that's another conversation. But and people need to really know the history and the real history. But in my opinion, Zionism at its core is a brutal, ruthless, racist ideology. And it shouldn't be conflated with Judaism, as we talked about, but you've experienced it for yourself. You've experienced the apartheid, settler, colonial sort of ethno-supremacist project. Not many people have. They read about it, but they don't really see it. It's like you said, it's out in the open for everyone to see it. And for me, there's no place for this fascist evil ideology. Like there's no place for Nazis today. People wouldn't say, oh, well, Hitler's gone, but everyone else can stay. So it's the same principle. And it's not really about if it's Netanyahu or whoever is in power. It's really, at its core, Zionism has to be dismantled. And I believe it's a matter of time. The veil has dropped. So solution-wise, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, for me, I believe in one democratic, decolonized state from the river to the sea. full reparation, equality, full equality, complete land and, if you like, resource restitution for all Palestinians. And of course, our right to return, which is guaranteed under international law. That's a big mouthful, but I'd love, Robert, to know, what does justice for Palestine, freedom, equality look like to you? And also, you know, the work that you're doing in Australia and internationally in helping bring whatever your vision is of free Palestine.
To me, very similar, pretty much exactly the same. What I say is one state for everybody. Everybody within that one state has equal rights. And anyone that doesn't want to fit into that equal states, they can leave. It's really simple. It's the way it should be. And you know, we get called hateful for asking for freedom, which is really crazy. But Zionism, it cannot be equal. Zionism is a Jewish place where the Palestinians already are. That it just doesn't make sense at all. But I believe also that obviously all the countries need to come together. They need to hold Israel to account. And I want to see people going to jail for a very, very long time, because every single drop of blood Palestinians have had is going towards their freedom. But we can't forget these criminals that have partaken in these murders. We cannot. We have to actually make sure that that's completely. It's such a hard. You know, if you close your eyes and you see the perfect place, it's hard, but it's possible. The world needs to realise that they made a mistake. Zionism didn't work. The occupation of Palestine didn't work. It needs to be taken apart. So decolonized as well is the first thing that we need to start, and to go from there, which I think is important. I'm not sure I answered the question, but
no, you answered it very, very well. Thank you.
I was going to also, I forgot to mention the Samud before, because you did ask me about the Samud.
Yes.
And they're doing a cracking job. And so there's two different people. There's the Freedom Flotilla Coalition. They were created because of the illegal siege that Israel has on Gaza. So they were created a long time ago. Been doing this a very, very long time. And the Samud has just created, but they're using some of the very, very man hours of over the years of the FFC. And so they've been able to get this in big numbers. So it's going to be fantastic, interesting to see how it works, because I know how hard it is to get one vote. In 2010, Israel executed 10 activists on the Mavi Marmara. And so we have to watch what happens when the Israelis have a whole lot to deal with. And that's my concern. But everyone on those boats, they're doing good work. And, I know that the Palestinians, I know that it means a lot to them. And there was one other thing that I forgot to mention. When I was in prison, we discussed quite often how lucky we were to be in prison with a white passport. And the Palestinians can get lost in this place, completely lost, and they do get lost. They get beaten, they get raped, they get tortured. And it happens on a regular basis. And we heard people screaming within that building. We don't know what they were or who they were or where they were from. But I would suggest that the Israelis wanted us to hear Palestinians screaming, and so they utilised the Palestinians at that time to make them scream so we would hear. That's the level of depravity that we're dealing with.
Yeah, it's shocking. Well, nothing is shocking when it comes to the
it's true.
Zionists. It's really atrocious, and as you said, the rapes and really all there are over 10,000 Palestinians held in detention, administrative detention, with no. They're not prisoners; they are hostages. But no one talks.
Yeah. Another 1,500 taken yesterday, so we can bump that number up.
That's one of the sickest things I've ever seen. Is horrific, and that is all for show too.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is horrific. It's time for people to stand up. With that in mind, you are on the Freedom Flotilla Steering Committee. I think you're planning more missions. You're co-hosting Palestine Remembered, I think, on 3CR Radio, speaking at events, speaking on our podcast. Are there any specific campaigns that our community that we reach with the podcast that they can actively support right now? Whether that's the current flotilla or anything else.
Yeah, of course. So I'm not on the steering committee. I've partaken in some of the meetings in Turkey, and they do some good work, and it's not an easy job. Some of the things that I didn't realize I had to worry about, you think, oh my gosh, it's not like planning a holiday. It is a whole different world, and then you've got to realize that you're planning a holiday that Israel just wants to do everything they can to ruin it, and they have tentacles everywhere. So yes, there's a boat going out very shortly. If people want to Google the Freedom Flotilla Coalition or Freedom Flotilla, but also the Sumud, SUMUD, it's a great name. It's a great name for such a thing, and do everything they can. Google it, search it, share it, post it, do whatever you can. But it'll be a good journey. And I know that it's is it a selfie boat? Yeah, it is a bit. Yeah, because we want the world to see, and it's been interesting how many people I have in Australia in suburbs that I would not have expected saying, "Hey, are you that guy?" And it's a great thing because I talked to them and they said, "Look, I didn't really know, but I started reading up about it because they want to know why there's such a small boat going to such a place to deliver aid. Why would you go through Israel's Navy and all of that?" And so it works. So it is a bit of a selfie thing. But unfortunately, normally you don't get selfie boats where people get executed. So it's a little bit more serious than that.
Mm. And just for the audience, sumud in Arabic means resilience. I mean, Palestinians are known for their sumud for now 100 plus years, and it's a wonderful name that it was chosen. Yeah, it's a great name.
Yeah.
Robert, you also wrote, and I quote, "I simply put myself in their shoes. I put my family in their shoes." What's the one non-negotiable message you have for every listener and viewer today that they must carry forward for Palestinian liberation?
First of all, let me say that I used to put myself in Palestinian shoes. I can't. I do not have that ability. I cannot understand what they go through. For empathy, you need to understand, but I will never, because I will never have the soldier with the gun leaning over me. I will never be in a house that's been demolished. I will never have a child in jail for no reason other than being Palestinian. I will not have an entire building wiped out by American-made weapons while the world blames me for being a Palestinian or a terrorist. So I can't do that anymore. So I have to try and just do what I can and do what I think they want me to do. Do not look back when you're older, because we will be judged. We will be judged on what's going on today. And I would hate to have a discussion with your grandchild or your daughter saying, "What did you do when those Israelis were killing and exterminating those Palestinians? What were you doing?" I would proudly bring out the pictures, the things that I've done, the rallies that I've attended, the letters that I have written, and hopefully you can say that I was a part of making change. Because if we are in a position where we can make change, we are an obligation to try and make that change. We cannot ignore
it. I love that. And that leads me very nicely to kind of wrap up to say a James Baldwin quote that's really wonderful. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And I know a lot of us feel overwhelmed sometimes with the politics of it all, with our leaders. But Robert's journey from believing mainstream lies to documenting truth exemplifies what can happen when we do confront reality. And as he said, history is going to judge every single one of us by how we respond and the actions we take or don't take to stop the ongoing erasure and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by this intentional Israeli man-made starvation and a barbaric live stream genocide in Gaza. It is our collective responsibility to speak out and to act against injustice If you have enjoyed today's episode, please at least take a moment to like it and to share it with a few people that you know, to subscribe. That engagement really helps to amplify voices like Robert's, who are taking the time to come here onto this podcast. And Robert, thank you for your moral courage and your unwavering solidarity with Palestine.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for having me.
No, and also to say shukran, Robert, thank you for your truth, your courage, for all that you do for Palestine. From a Palestinian, it's beyond appreciated. And as I wrap, stories and representation matter. Stay informed, stay engaged, speak up, and most importantly, as Robert says, take action for justice for Palestine. Our collective voice is making a change. In solidarity and with appreciation. See you next time. And Robert, shukran again for all that you do.
Thank you. Palestine.
Free Palestine.